Good afternoon. I'm Lori Matson, President and CEO of the Tri-City Regional Chamber. Thank you so much for attending the 2021 Tri-Cities Diversity Summit keynote presentation. When the first Tri-Cities Diversity Summit took place 4 years ago, the intent was to create open, meaningful dialogue about issues that affect business and residents in our region. Due to the COVID pandemic, we're presenting this event virtually for the second year. And although we aren't gathering in person to have these conversations with each other, our hope is that everyone who've watched these sessions this week will find opportunities to have open, meaningful dialogue within their workplace and their peer groups. The Tri-City Regional Chamber of Commerce values diversity and views it as a strength in our society. As a champion for the business community, we believe that creating an inclusive environment is key to the growth and sustainability of the Tri-Cities. Since the 2021 Tri-Cities Diversity Summit kicked off on Monday, we've listened to 4 impactful sessions from DEI experts and business leaders, both locally and from across the country. Thank you to all of our fantastic presenters, panelists, and moderators for coordinating and participating in these important discussions. All the previous sessions are posted on the Chamber's YouTube channel, Facebook page, and the Chamber's website at tricityregionalchamber.com. We'll also email a link out to all of today's attendees. Please feel free to share the videos with your friends, family, and colleagues. Today, we will hear from keynote speaker Kuma Roberts on how inclusive communities win. Kuma will give you 5 quick wins to supercharge your business strategy for inclusion. She is a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant with over 10 years of organizational development experience. Also, in a few moments, we'll announce the recipients of the 2021 Tri-Cities Champion of Diversity Awards. The Tri-Cities Champion of Diversity Awards aim to recognize and commend an individual and a member organization that demonstrate outstanding achievement and sustained commitment to the pursuit of diversity and inclusion in the community and in the workplace. The Tri-Cities Diversity Summit would not be possible without the generosity of our many sponsors. The Pacific Northwest National Laboratory has been our premier sponsor of the Tri-Cities Diversity Summit since the event began in 2018. The Regional Chamber is thankful for their partnership. In addition to the lab, we'd like to thank other gold sponsors, Greater Columbia Accountable Community of Health and HAPO Community Credit Union. Our silver sponsors, Christensen Inc., Columbia Basin College, Energy Northwest, HPM Corporation, and Cadleck. And to our bronze sponsors, Bechtel National Inc., BNSF Railway, Carbitex, Redder & Company Sotheby's International Realty, and Washington State University Tri-Cities. Thank you all for your investment in the Tri-Cities Diversity Summit. We greatly appreciate your partnership. Now I'd like to turn the rest of the program over to the chair of the Chamber's Board of Directors, Shay Frechette. Hi, Shay. How are you today?
I'm great, Lori. It is so fantastic to be here. I have the privilege of announcing the recipients of the 2021 Tri-Cities Champion of Diversity Awards. And as Lori mentioned, the Champion of Diversity Awards recognize an individual and organization that demonstrate outstanding achievements and sustained commitment to the pursuit of diversity and inclusion in the community and workplace. In October, the Chamber released a call for award nominations, and people throughout our community submitted nominations through the Chamber website. Those nominations were presented to the Chamber's Award and Recognition Committee and judged based on the award criteria. So we're going to begin today with the 2021 Tri-Cities Champion of Diversity Award for an individual. The recipient of this award was selected because she has been tireless in her efforts to increase awareness of equity gaps that exist in the Tri-Cities community, and she promotes the value of a diverse and inclusive society. Her leadership of the My Tri 2030 Inclusion Council is inspirational because she embodies what it means to be a leader in DEI efforts. It's my pleasure to congratulate Kimberly Harper, the 2021 Tri-Cities Champion of Diversity Award recipient.
So first off, I want to say thank you so much to the folks that nominated me, to the community, to the Tri-Cities Chamber of Commerce, such a beautiful award. I know of so many people in the community who do the important work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and who promote it on a daily basis, that I think are also very deserving of this. So it's with a lot of humility that I say thank you, because there's so many people that are passionate about doing this work that you could have given this award to. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Those words are synonymous with love. I think in life there are two emotions, love and fear. And our world today is so immersed in fear, in ways of finding differences, divisions. America, to me, is all about celebrating differences. We're a melting pot. And so coming to a place like the Tri-Cities was a culture shock for me, because I'd grown up, in the southern region of the country. And I have to say that we have a lot of work to do here in the Tri-Cities, but this place has also provided such opportunities for a little black girl who moved here, 26 years ago across the country. I raised my daughter here, and I'd like to think that as a community, we can find ways to stamp out the fear and embrace the love, and really figure out how we're stronger together. I love the work that we're doing for My Tri 2030 in the Inclusion Council, where our vision is all about being a courageously authentic community that embraces our growing diversity. If any of you have been here for longer than 5 years, you've seen the Tri-Cities really change over the last decade, 2 decades. One of my favorite quotes from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is, "We may have all come over on different ships, but we're all in the same boat now." It speaks to the importance of recognizing the value in teamwork. And so I think that as a community, if we could learn to embrace the idea that when we wake up in the morning, when we go to bed at night with our families, we all want the same things. And so it's my heart's passion to continue to do this work and to promote the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion for everyone, because as a community, we're growing, but we're also growing more diverse, and there's strength in our diversity.
Congratulations, Kimberly. So well deserved. Next, we'll present the 2021 Tri-Cities Champion of Diversity Award for an organization. The recipient of this award was selected because they have dedicated time, staff, and resources to implementing a comprehensive DEI strategy. It is a clear priority in their organization for DEI to be infused in everything they do, from collections to customer service to employment and leadership. The 2021 Tri-Cities Champion of Diversity Award for an organization goes to MidColumbia Libraries.
MidColumbia Libraries has been on their DEI journey officially for about a year now, but we've been doing a lot of the work for a long time leading up to this. We make a huge effort in ensuring our collections reflect a variety of perspectives and worldviews and lived experiences. And being able to be a part of this journey, being able to be part of this initiative with MCL has been amazingly rewarding. It has been at times stressful and hard, but never in my life have I done anything that mattered as much as what we're doing here. So it means honestly everything that our community saw us and thought we deserved this award, and I am incredibly appreciative and thankful for that they feel that we are that safe and welcoming environment, because MCL is that place for me too. I am able to work in a place where I am respected, where my pronouns and identity are acknowledged and honored, and I love that we can be that for our community too. And we have been working so hard, but we have so far left to go on this journey, and thank you for your trust in us and for loving us for what we do, and just know that we are going to keep working hard and continue to do everything we can to do right by our community.
So being able to lead a part of this and have a say is really important, because it helps us come forward and come together as a unit, instead of it just being like something that's being forced down upon us. You know, I had a say in how we got to do things and how everything kind of evolved, which was really exciting to me, because it helped me see the progress that we are making and that we're currently making and still making. We still have a long way to go, but the fact that we at least are acknowledging this and looking at it in and of itself is a step. And I really, I'm grateful for MCL for having me be able to do that.
Another thing that I think is vastly important to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion has to do with the representation you see in books that has come to the fore in recent years. The same way that people see themselves in the stories that they read, we'd like to try to reflect that in the spaces that we have at the libraries. Just so that when people come into the library, they feel like they're welcome and they belong, and that's where they want to be.
So here at MCL, through our DE&I journey, we've made a really great effort to recognize and honor our staff for their most authentic selves, and I think that's such a powerful part of our DE&I journey. I think it helps us in our continual progress to serve the community. Similar to the saying from Lilo and Stitch, you know, Ohana means family. Family means nobody gets left behind. So for the library, as a library family with our staff, everybody is on a different place in their DE&I journeys. But at the end of the day, we're not leaving anybody behind. Everybody's going at the pace that they want to go or need to go at this time. So we can continue to make that progress as a system, but also in our community.
Libraries exist because we believe that knowledge and learning not only improves the individual, but improves society. Our DEI journey is about learning, about others and ourselves. Throughout this process, we are learning and growing as a staff, and learning and growing to better serve you, our community, and our region. On behalf of the staff and the Board of Trustees of MidColumbia Libraries, I thank you for this recognition. Staff have done a fantastic job over the past year, putting their heart and soul into this because they believe in it, and they see the good that it does for us and our greater community. Thank you for using us as your public library, and thank you for coming with us on this journey as we learn and we grow for a more respectful and empathetic society. Thank you.
Congratulations to the team at MidColumbia Libraries, and congratulations again to Kimberly Harper. We are proud to honor you both as the 2021 Tri-Cities Champion of Diversity Award winners. As previously mentioned, the premier sponsor of the Tri-Cities Diversity Summit is Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. Lab Director Dr. Steve Ashby provided us with a message for our audience. He will also introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you for the introduction, Shay, and congratulations to our Tri-Cities Champion of Diversity awardees. You have demonstrated the impact that we can have individually and collectively in our efforts to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in our workplaces and communities. On behalf of the Department of Energy's Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, we are proud to serve as the premier sponsor of the 2021 Tri-Cities Diversity Summit. And we're pleased to partner with the Tri-Cities Regional Chamber in bringing these important dialogues to our community. We know that we have much work to do to build communities that fully embrace and celebrate diversity, and to create workplaces that are equitable and inclusive. But if the last 2 days are any indication, we are up to the challenge. Your enthusiasm and engagement demonstrate our shared passion to grow and improve. We have gained valuable insights from colleagues who are driving real progress, and we've learned techniques and strategies from experts who are committed to helping us in our efforts to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is inspiring to see so many members of our community engage in these sessions. It is clear that we have a shared belief in the power of diversity to enrich our personal and professional lives, and a shared commitment to make our neighborhoods and companies inclusive of all. At P&L, we are committed to ensuring a work environment where creativity and innovation thrive. Fundamental to this is a culture where diversity, equity, and inclusion are embraced and valued. Our ability to succeed requires multidisciplinary teams comprised of diverse individuals who bring a breadth of perspectives, insights, and experiences to every challenge. And we can attest to the value of the techniques and approaches we've been taught this week. They do work. At P&L, we developed and implemented a DEI strategy that is working for us. Our applicant pool is more diverse, and so is our hiring. 42% of permanent hires last year were ethnically or racially diverse, and we have more women in leadership roles than ever before, including on our executive leadership team. This diversity is strengthening our culture and making P&L a better place. It also is bolstering our creativity and innovation, traits essential to our success as a Department of Energy national laboratory. These tangible, bottom-line benefits of DEI can work for your companies too. I know that many of you attending today are advocating for diversity and inclusion that are ways meaningful to you. Hopefully the sessions thus far and today's keynote address will further equip and inspire you to build upon your successes to date. Now, introducing today's keynote speaker, Kuma Roberts, IOM, who is the Senior Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Consultant for Arrowhead Consulting. Kuma is a recognized leader in organizational development, specializing in the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as strategies for becoming an equity-centered organization. She focuses on building cultural competence and inclusive workplace language, as well as addressing implicit bias. As a graduate of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Institute of Organizational Management, Kuma has been presented lectures to hundreds of organizations around the country, addressing how they can harness the power of DE&I to enhance their competitive advantage. She is passionate about racial and social justice, emphasizing the need to shift policy and practice versus hearts and minds. I'm a firm believer that everyone has a role to play in addressing inequities and increasing diversity and inclusion in our workplaces and communities. When she isn't speaking, Kuma loves cooking for her husband, wrestling with her 3-year-old son, and arguing with her 16-year-old daughter. I think many of us can relate to those domestic challenges. So now, join me in welcoming Kuma Roberts.
Hello, Tri-City. I am so excited to be with you all today. And from what I've heard thus far in your program, there is so much to be excited about what's happening within your region. I'm excited to share with you some of my tips for winning with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And again, I'm just honored to be here, and congratulations to those winners today for exemplifying all that it means to be truly diverse, equitable, and inclusive organizations. So I like to typically give my own introduction of myself by saying I'm diversity personified. And what that looks like is as Dr. Ashby mentioned, I'm married to Floyd, my husband, who's 33 years my senior. He's 78 years old, and together we're raising our 3-year-old son, Zeke, who's soon to be 4 in a couple of weeks, my 16-year-old daughter from another marriage. He's the stay-at-home dad. I'm the go-to-work mom. My father was an African immigrant who came to this country for a better education. My mother was a strong Baptist woman who carried her Bible around forever, it seemed like, in her purse. I say all of these things to describe to you that I have a lot of elements of diversity that make me who I am, that are not necessarily tied to my race or my gender alone. There's so many things that make us who we are. And I would encourage all of you, as a part of the Tri-City region, that you also are diversity personified. There's so much more in this world that connects us than separates us. And I never want you all to have conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion and say the things I often hear when I'm speaking to homogenous groups like perhaps your own is, right? Where there's not a ton of representation. That is this isn't for me. This isn't for us. I'm just white. I'm just this. I'm just that, right? All those reasons that we count ourselves out of this work. I encourage you to embrace the fact that you are diversity personified, and it will take us all to do this work together. A little bit about the organization. I left the Tulsa Regional Chamber after about 10 years of doing a little bit of everything there, so I'm really familiar with the chamber space. I did workforce development, education, and then left there as this SVP of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and joined a small consulting firm called Arrowhead Consulting. There, we have expanded our services to include diversity, equity, inclusion assessments. And again, excited to share a little bit about our work and some of the ways you all can begin to do this for your own organizations. But first, I think we should play a little game. It's called How Diverse is Your Universe? I'm going to ask you some questions. And as you're thinking about the people that I'm asking you about, think about how different they are from you. Race, ethnicity, gender, perhaps a disability status, all of those elements that make someone different from you. Think about who those people are in your life and how often you encounter them as we go through these questions. Are you ready? The first one is your significant other. Who is that person to you? Race, ethnicity, gender, other elements of difference. How different are they from you, your significant other? What about your neighbor on either side of the house? Who lives next to you? What kind of people are they? When you think about race, ethnicity, gender, or any other elements of difference that you might have with your neighbors, think about who they are. What about your teachers? And if you can't remember the teachers you had, like I have trouble remembering back when I was in school, think about your children's teachers, or perhaps your grandchildren's teachers. Most predominantly, who are those individuals? What do they look like? Race, ethnicity, gender, any other elements of difference? Who's in front of your kids every day? What about this one? Your doctor. When you think about who's in charge of your health care, your life, your family's care as it relates to your health, who is that person and how different are they from you? Race, ethnicity, gender, other elements of difference. What about the folks you hang out with on the weekends? When you think about letting your hair down, relaxing, enjoying some time at the pool or the lake or however you enjoy your off hours, who are those people? Race, ethnicity, gender, who are they to you? How different are they from you? And then lastly, let's think about the person you most admire, the person who's had the greatest impact on your life. When you think about that person, who is that person to you? How different are they from you? Okay, the game is over. Now I have to ask the question again. How diverse is your universe? Because what I found whenever I do this exercise is oftentimes we don't have a ton of diversity in our universe. We typically stick with our bubble, right? Like, likes, like. We kind of are most comfortable. We want to live in communities, hang out with, enjoy people. We most admire people who remind us of ourselves or we have much in common with. But when we think about the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, what's wonderful, where the growth happens, where the innovation happens, is when you get outside of that bubble and you start to think about how you can connect and build relationship with people who are different from yourself. I'm no exception. I do this all the time and oftentimes have a very sort of one set group that I hang out with, that I enjoy, that I live near. And so I too have to think about how to get outside of my bubble and get a more diverse universe. And as we think about that diversity in our universes, it applies to our organizations that we work for as well. How we're all guided is what's above the surface in this organizational culture iceberg. It's the vision, it's the strategy, it's the shared goals, policies, procedures, all the things that we say are how work gets done within our organization. But how we really get the work done is what's beneath the surface, right? It's the beliefs, those shared assumptions, perceptions, traditions, stories, feelings, and even those unwritten rules that are toiling under the surface of our organizations. And that's how the work is really getting done. That's why people are leaving and you don't know why. That's why you don't have a ton of people of color or across difference within your leadership teams, right? And so the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion is all about removing the waterline. How do we make what we say we do match the way we really do the work? And that's what excites me about the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and why I love that Tri-Cities has come together to really celebrate those organizations that are working on pulling down that waterline. You truly understand, and certainly those recipients today, understand the way you say you get things done has to match the way the work really gets done within your organization and across your communities. One of the ways that happens is through language and creating a shared language for how you talk about this work. Language is truly the roadmap of a culture. It tells you where its people come from and where they are going. And Rita Mae Brown was absolutely right. So I love to make sure that we're all on the same page when we talk about what DEI really means. And for me, diversity is this: all the ways in which we differ. It's representation. It's that difference, right? And it's not just race and gender. It's all of those things that make us different, that give us our flair, our style, and make us who we are. And then we have equity. Equity is the fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement for all people, where one's identity cannot predict the outcome of their lives. And then we have inclusion, where a variety of people have power, have voice, and decision-making authority. It's these three concepts that truly are at the core of the incredible work that I get to do each and every day. And I hope that as we build shared language, you all too can leverage that in order to do the work necessary to make sure your organizations are winning diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I talk about, that I am a Black woman, right? And I certainly talk about race extensively, but I don't talk about race exclusively, because I believe cities and regions like your own might need to think beyond race and ethnicity when we talk about embracing diversity for our workplaces. For instance, the stat here shows that race and ethnicity, that by the time 2065 rolls around, only 46% of the population will be white, with no racial or ethnic group being considered a majority. And that's pretty staggering as we think about all of our diversity strategies that center on race and race alone, when we see that there's a wider breadth of things, and in just a few years, or a few short years to many of us, it feels like, that race won't even be a factor. Everyone will be so mixed, there'll be mixed races, and we won't have a dominant group. How then are you thinking about being and representing diversity when race won't be a factor? The other element of diversity is ability. 1 in 4 American adults identify as having a disability. And for a really good friend of mine who happens to be a wheelchair user, he says it's the one minority group any one of us could enter at any time. So as you think about ability and its relation to embracing diversity, you're missing out if you're not considering how to make your facilities, how to make your websites more accessible to those who might have a disability. And then there's age. Did you all know that the millennials have recently overtaken the baby boomers as the largest generation in our workplace? Well, it's no surprise to me. I'm surrounded by them here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But my point is, in my mind, I think millennials are still this like really young group of kids who are kind of like playing on their phones, but they are in our workplaces. And they appreciate the balance that COVID-19 has given them because they can work from home. There's been some flexibility. There's been some adaptivity. There's been some accommodations for childcare and other real benefits that this particular group is looking for when they're looking for a place to work. How are you embracing millennials? And certainly that blending of the boomers and the millennials in your workplace when you're thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. One of the most forgotten groups is our veterans. In 2016, 7% of American adults were veterans who have a variety of transferable skills. They have incredible work ethic. They're highly skilled and trained. They've served our country valiantly. They leave that service, and oftentimes they enter the workforce, or the employers have no idea what to do with them because we can't figure out a way to crosswalk their skills learned in service into the skills needed in the workplace. As you all think about the dimensions of diversity, think about your veterans as a way to increase dimensions of diversity within your organization. Then we have the LGBTQ plus organization, a group of individuals, where an estimated 3 to 5% of Americans identify as LGBTQ plus. And as one economic developer shared with me one time, that for them, you and your organization are a no before you even know it, because they're looking at your application process. Do you have options for those who consider themselves to be non-binary? How are you languaging your bathrooms? Is it single stall bathrooms that are women and men, or is it for everyone? I mean, these are some of the issues in the workplace that this particular group is looking at and thinking, am I going to feel welcome and affirmed, right? And so when you're thinking about those dimensions of diversity, think about the LGBTQ plus. And we're all feeling the effects of globalism. And so with our refugee and immigrant populations, we have to recognize that 13.5% of the American population is foreign born. And I believe that's quite significant as well in your region. And beginning in 2030, migration will become the primary driver of growth. So as we're seeing here in Tulsa, the influx of Afghan resettlements that are happening, we see Haitian individuals coming up and crossing the borders and joining into America. How are you embracing this group of individuals in your organization? Are you thinking about HB1 visas? Are you thinking about translation services? Again, this is all a part of the beauty of the work of dimensions of diversity. And if you're thinking about just race and ethnicity, you're missing the boat. So let's talk about another really interesting topic. So that was diversity. Let's talk about equity. Equity is one of those really complicated concepts that I get a lot of questions about, and I want to share a little bit with you all. Oftentimes we mistake equality for equity, and what I want to share with you all is that they are quite different. Equality is what you see at the top. It's where we offer everyone the same thing. And oftentimes in our organizations and in our communities, we say, we just want to be fair. We want to treat everyone the same, right? Everyone should get the same thing as everyone else. And then truly we would have a wonderful society. But oftentimes what you get is someone who perhaps is a wheelchair user being given what's fair, a standard bike. They can't use that bike. They're not able to go anywhere on that bike. That really tall gentleman who's using the standard bike, he's uncomfortable. He's not going to get anywhere very fast getting the fair thing that everyone else got. Same for the young woman and same for the little boy. Equity says if equality is the outcome, equity is the vehicle. It is those resources and tools we can give people now so that they can be successful in their lives and within our organizations. So equity says if you're a wheelchair user, we're going to give you a bike adapted for your purpose so that you can be successful, you can get where you need to go. Same for the tall guy. He's got a bike that fits his frame. He's comfortable. He's able to make sense of it and able to pedal and run this race or bike in this race that we're all in terms of our societies and in our communities. Same for the young woman and same for the boy. Hopefully this illustration gives you a better sense of the difference between equality, which is the outcome we all want to be treated and created equally, but equity is the means. It's that resource, it's the vehicle for us to get there. And I believe more organizations need to address equity in order to truly become more inclusive organizations. I also want to share with you that equity is aspirational. It means improved conditions and outcomes for marginalized people. It means that increased power to determine and sustain those improvements. And it also means greater integration, interaction, and interdependence across identities. So it is that kind of pie in the sky place we want to get to. But what I want you all to know is that equity is operational. It is about interrupting inequitable practices. It's about examining your biases and about creating inclusive environments for all individuals, especially those who've been historically marginalized. I love this line. It is a proactive approach to making systems work fairly to produce results that people can feel in their lives. You can't tell me that you walk into the libraries that beautiful video shown earlier, and people don't feel the difference that welcoming and affirming place has on their lives. That's when you know you have operationalized equity appropriately, right? And so think about that when you think about how to supercharge equity to produce a result that people can feel in their lives. This quote says, "An equitable society would be one in which the distribution of benefits and burdens is not determined, predictable, or disproportionate by identity or place." I don't know about you, but here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, you can live in North Tulsa and live 13 years less than everyone else on the other side of the train tracks simply because we haven't figured out how to be a more equitable society or an equitable community. Think about those things for your community and what would truly ensure that everyone could be successful in your world. This quote by James Baldwin is one of my favorites, and I use it all the time. He says, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." And what I love about your diversity summit and many of the others that I speak at across the nation is that everyone is beginning to think about facing some really hard stuff that this work is. It's hard. It's not easy. And I'm not saying you're going to be able to change everything, but you can't change anything until you begin to look more deeply at how to do the work. So how to do that is build the business case. This is one of the main things I like to rely on when I'm thinking about doing the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. What I mean when I say the business case is oftentimes people say, this is the right thing to do. It feels good. We should definitely do this work because, it's just the right thing to do. And it's true, it is the right thing to do. But I would also say that it's also the smart thing to do. I would also say that it's the profitable thing to do, because when you're doing this work, you are attracting and retaining the highest quality, highly skilled, most diverse talent possible. And as a result, you're going to be a thriving organization and community as a result. So when organizations act on diversity, equity, and inclusion, they experience larger revenue growth, oftentimes 3 times the revenue growth compared to those who are less inclusive. They experience more positive employee interactions, 18% more effective at creating that positive experience than others who are not embracing D&I. And then, of course, the thing we're all looking for as we're employers and communities and chambers, we're looking for that retention. And when you're acting on D&I, you are 4%, you have turnover that's 4% lower than those who are not thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And when we talk about performance, we know that gender diversity alone means that there's a 48% performance differential between the least and most gender diverse organizations. But when you take gender and couple that with ethnic and cultural diversity, organizations in the top quartile of ethnic and cultural diversity outperform those in the bottom quartile by 36%. And then when you have a diverse board on top of all of those other things, wow, your board of directors are performing in the top quartile of gender diversity and outperform their peers financially by 28%. When I talk about the business case for diversity, equity, inclusion, I'm talking about that innovation. I'm talking about that retention. I'm talking about the performance differential that makes those organizations better because they get and understand that this work is a part of your competitive advantage. One of the main keys to that is assessment. How do you know that you're doing good work? How do you know if you're progressing along the line? And I want to share one of the simpler ways with you that I like to use for organizations who might be just starting out or those who are more developed in their work and are just looking on what's kind of the end result. And for me, that area is this diversity, equity, inclusion maturity matrix. It starts with basic, where you're sort of operating from a compliance level, right? Where D&I is on the agenda, it's up for discussion, but perhaps you only address it annually. You're not thinking about it as part of your day-to-day work, right? And people understand that it's important, but again, there's no plan or deployment of any D&I initiative to actually embed this work as part of your competitive advantage. As we saw last summer and after the murder of George Floyd, many organizations moved into awareness where D&I became increasingly recognized as a business benefit and an inclusive culture was acknowledged as key to your success, right? And so D&I initiatives at that level are deployed and monitored to support continuous improvement. What I love was we've gotten into awareness, but I'm seeing more and more organizations moving into understanding and application, where management top down fully recognizes the business benefits and they can demonstrate that implementing D&I strategies can help create the inclusive work environment that they are looking for, that's making the difference in them attracting and retaining that high quality talent. And ultimately, the sweet spot where we're all trying to get to is where it's more integrated, where it's truly a part of our day-to-day activities, where management is committed to creating an environment that supports D&I and is encouraging the right behaviors. It's a part of your evaluation. It's embedded in your board agendas, in your staff agendas. You're getting high-quality training throughout all of that. That's what it looks like to be integrated. And sustainable is that's how the work gets done. It is a part of your day-to-day, and D&I drives your strategy. And the impact of D&I is extremely clear to everyone within your organization because it enhances your competitive advantage. So just take a second and think about where is your organization on the maturity matrix. No shame if it's just in basic. You know that there's work to do. But certainly if you're in awareness, how can you move into understanding and application, integrated and sustainable? Think about that. And that's one of the simpler ways to think about assessment. I just want to give you an idea of some of the more advanced assessments, certainly the one that we have developed here at Arrowhead. We have something we call the D&I focused organizational health assessment, which says over 5 categories: communication and outreach, leadership, organizational accountability, talent, and experience and perception. We can give this assessment to your board, to your staff, and we get this heat map that ultimately tells us where there might be opportunities for improvement, in this case, in leadership under direction and goals. And then what are some of the things that are working really well for your organization, like communication and outreach, talent, experience, and perception. So you go from that more simpler idea of assessing where your organization is to a variety of more complicated ways to assess your organization as it relates to D&I. We encourage you to try one or both or all that you can get your hands on to make sure that you very well know where you're starting in terms of your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I would also be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that bias is a virus. And so we need to do more work within our organizations and across our communities to address unconscious bias and its impacts, not only on our communities, but our organizations. And oftentimes recognizing bias is key to doing that. Yes, it's a tough conversation, but the more our chambers and other organizations can partner or use shared services to have conversations around bias, to identify it, to understand how to disrupt it, then your community is going to be well on their way to doing a great job toward becoming much more inclusive and winning as it relates to D&I. Another thing I want you all to know is that we have to change the conversation from talking about our intent versus our impact. I hear a lot of companies say, our intention in our hiring policy wasn't to alienate or create barriers for people across difference. My intention wasn't to hurt your feelings. My intention. But we never actually roll that conversation to the point where we can talk about the impact of the intention. The impact is much more significant. And so you have to ask your employees, what are the impacts of some of the choices we've made? What are the impacts when we don't see representation in our leadership? Why would that be that more women aren't represented? What are the impacts of the choices we've made? And so I encourage you all to get really serious and dig in past intent and move to impact of some of the organizational decisions that you might have within your organization. And then, of course, embrace measurement. And measurement is key to doing this work. And we all want to know, how will we know? What will we measure in order to know that we've got there? And I just want to quickly share some ways that I do that work. I do a simple little goal sheet like this, where we show the strategic pillar. In this case, the organization said people was important to them. They wanted equitable treatment for all individuals. Great. So we have goals associated to that. In their case, it was have an environment that ensures all employees are rewarded equitably for their work. Perfect. What are those metrics? How do we measure that? Well, the gender wage gap is one way, doing a pay audit. The racial wage gap is another way, doing a pay audit to make sure that you're aligning and everyone's getting paid, no matter their race or gender. And then, of course, an employee satisfaction form with pay fairness as part of the questions that you might ask your employees. All of these are actual tangible ways you can measure whether you are truly having that effect that people can feel in their lives as it relates to equity. Same thing as it relates to flexible work hours and ensuring employees can balance work and family responsibilities. What you can measure are the work environment engagement driver score, the number of personal days taken, are people taking all their days, and then, of course, those turnover rates where you're losing people who cite that there's a lack of flexibility. Those are all measures that really point to the fact that D&I or DEI is not just how you say the work gets done, but it's truly a part of how the work happens within your organization. Here's just a few other business case metrics that I think are pretty easy for organizations who might just be starting out. How many trainings are you offering in relation to diversity, equity, and inclusion? What are the participation rates, not only across your staff, but within your leadership team? Do you have a visible purpose statement, something that really states your commitment to D&I? And then where is it? How many places is it? Is it your website? Is it on your application, your newsletters, your agendas? Think about all of that. And then lastly, think about the number of hours spent, your staff, you, your leadership teams, your board, toward D&I training. When I left the Tulsa Regional Chamber, I knew that our board on average had about 15 hours of D&I training that was led by me or within the community. And that was a pretty powerful number to get people to understand the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is just a real big metric, and I'll share these slides with Elizabeth and others so that you all see this is the Michigan Chamber created a metrics inventory. And across D&I and HR function, workforce, leadership, all of these categories are actual measurable metrics that you all can leverage in order to show and prove that your work toward getting into sustainable is actually making progress within your organization as it relates to D&I. And lastly, I'm going to end with how to practice inclusion. So Dr. Ashby mentioned I would be sharing 5 tips. I'm going to share 5 tips of how you can practice inclusion within your organization. But first, let's talk about your community. The first one would be to appoint board advisory council members from the community so voices from all groups of people can participate in decisions. Think about actively recruiting a diverse mix of multiracial and multi-ethnic staff across all levels within your organization. But when that isn't readily available, think about those other dimensions of diversity to make sure that you have a variety of perspectives represented. Develop, mandate, and promote standards for diverse, equitable, inclusive leadership and service. I love that you give awards recognizing those organizations that are committed to this. And so begin to really promote those standards and create an expectation across your community that that is something that you all are seeking. And then insist on cultural competence when contracting with other organizations and partnerships. I know several companies that require us to sign sort of a commitment that we align with their value and their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion before giving grant funds and other ways. How are you sort of raising the expectation that those you partner with should believe and align with you all as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion? And then lastly, for your organization, Include cultural competence and implicit bias training requirements for all staff, and then put that will be a part of the job description, that they will have this extensive training in these areas, because it's important, and share that with potential employees. It's important to you that this work happens and you want them to come aboard excited to buy into it. Ensure all staff participates in high quality, consistent diversity, equity, inclusion training. Promote mentorship and sponsorship programs that build relationships across difference. And then again, consider your hours of operation, facilities, application processes, communications, and ensure that they're thoughtful, respectful, and intentional about inclusion. I'm going to leave you all with a quote that speaks to me every time I read it, and I want to share it with you all. If you've come to help me, then you are wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. Oftentimes, communities come to help, right? We just want to help. We're just going to do this. We're just going to do that. We don't recognize that our very sustainability, our very relevance, our profitability, all of that is bound up with how we engage with people across difference. I want to encourage you, Tri-City, to be and know that your liberation is bound up with all of us across difference. And when we do that, we can truly work together. I have been honored to share my message with you all today, and hope that you stay in touch with me, and love to hear from you all, and love to learn more about the journey that you all are going on as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion. Thanks again for the time, and I'll just pass this off. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kuma, for that fantastic presentation. Lots of great nuggets like goals and metric examples. Of course, we wish we could have hosted you in person and welcomed you to our community, but we really enjoy working with you remotely. Well, that concludes our 2021 Tri-Cities Diversity Summit. Thank you so much for joining us today for this impactful week of presentations. And once again, thank you to the sponsors of the 2021 Tri-Cities Diversity Summit. We're grateful for the partnership and leadership in our community. Thank you to our premier sponsor, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, the gold sponsors, Greater Columbia Accountable Community of Health and HAPO Community Credit Union, the silver sponsors, Christensen Inc., Columbia Basin College, Energy Northwest, HPM Corporation, and Cadillac. And of course, our bronze sponsors, Bechtel National Inc., BNSF Railway, Carbotex, Redder and Company, Sotheby's International Realty, and Washington State University Tri-Cities. Thank you again to all of the session moderators, presenters, and panelists. Your time and effort are greatly appreciated. All the sessions from the Tri-Cities Diversity Summit will be posted on the Chamber's YouTube channel, Facebook page, and website. That website is tricityregionalchamber.com. We will also email the links out to all of today's attendees, so please feel free to share these videos with your friends, family, and colleagues. In partnership with the My Tri 2030 Inclusion Council and the Tri-City Regional Chamber of Commerce, Greater Columbia ACH is piloting the JEDI initiative. That's Environmental Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion through the JEDI survey. Organizations will be provided an incentive of $100 to take the survey, which will provide Greater Columbia ACH a baseline for the level of DEI adoption within the Bi-County region. Please click the link in the chat to take the survey. Once again, thank you all so much for joining us for the 2021 Tri-Cities Diversity Summit. Take great care, and we hope to see you virtually or in person soon.